Hi there, and welcome to the very first of the visualizations that accompanies this series of lectures. In this one, I want to give you a chance to have a closer look at the maps I used in the lecture, and also to introduce you to some others. While teaching this course, I've become fascinated by world maps that predate our modern world view. That modern image started to take shape in the 15th century as European sailors mapped down the west coast of Africa and then so-called discovered America. And don't forget that one of the advantages of a visualization is that you can always pause at an image you want to view in more detail. Well, let's start with the all too familiar Mercator projection. Now the next visualization is the bronze Mycop files with a full map representation, which we also looked at in the lecture itself. I want to show you this silk map, which was discovered in Hanun province in China in 1973. It dates from about 160 BC. It's interesting because of its accuracy. It was probably drawn on a grid, although you can't see that, and also for its innovative use of symbols. Now this is the map devised by Ptolemy, a Greek geographer living in Egypt. We don't have any surviving maps, but we do have his grid measurements, and these were used in the 1400s in order to reconstruct his world view. Note the belief at the time that the Indian Ocean was an enclosed sea, a belief that persisted for another 1,000 years or more. Now this next map is one of my favourites. It's a copy of a Roman map dating from about 300 or 400 AD. It's made up of 12 panels, 40 centimetres high, and has a total length of almost 7 metres. It shows the entire Roman Empire. The panel I've chosen shows the area where I live. The gash near the bottom is the Mediterranean. Now dating from almost the same period is a mosaic map of the Middle East, discovered in 1884 in a church in Jordan. The map was intended for Christian pilgrims, and I particularly like its 3D portrayal of Jerusalem, which I've enlarged for you. Now then we come to the Kashghari map that you saw in the lecture, and which we've reoriented now to the north, and I've indicated some of the main locations for you. Now we turn to an Arab map created by Muhammad Al-Idrisi in 1154. It's orientated so south is at the top, but if I invert it, it'll be more familiar. The Mediterranean is on a better scale than the version by Ptolemy, and there's much more detail in the Indian Ocean. But if you look up the top there, Britain does seem to have suffered. Now here is a typical Christian medieval map, this one dating from 1265 AD. It's oriented to the east. At the centre is Jerusalem, and the top half is occupied by Asia, the bottom left is Europe, and the bottom right is Africa. The map itself is filled with place names, bits of biblical history including Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, if you look just inside the world circle at the top, and the unfamiliar parts, for example in Africa, are filled with mysterious fantasy creatures. It's a medieval world, but it's also our configured world. It's filled with some detailed knowledge, some associated pieces of information, and with bits of imagination and fantasy to fill out the rest. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this trip to the past, and if you have any examples of your own, put some URLs and a little bit of context on the thread that we'll create in the forum, and let's see what sort of collection we can build up together.